Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast on DD India. We bring to you an interview with Denmark's foreign minister. It would be followed by a discussion with a guest in the studio to help you better understand the current state of play in Denmark-India ties. We're calling it India-Denmark, a green strategic partnership. As the name suggests, Denmark takes climate change as seriously as India. In fact, Denmark is keen to elevate its strategic partnership with India to the strategic level, but with a difference. It wants the focus to be on clean and green technologies. It's indeed quite a unique concept, and we'll be discussing about it at some length in a bit. But first, take a look at the interview with Danish Foreign Minister Jeppe Kofod, who was in India for a conference on the margins of which he had meetings with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and others. I have with me a very special guest, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Jeppe Kofod. Mr. Minister, thank you for sparing your time and to be here on DD India. Appreciate it. Let's begin by talking about your ongoing visit to India. How did your meetings with the Indian leaders go, and who all have you met on the margins of the Raisina dialogue?
Well, first of all, I met your Prime Minister Modi. Very interesting and a very fruitful meeting. And he was also explaining, I think, very forcefully what he has done, for example, to provide sanitation to all parts of the country and the vision for a new India. So I think for me, coming from Denmark and the Danish government, it's very important. I also met with the Minister for Water, and I'm also later going to have a meeting with the Foreign Minister. And I think all of that is confirming that we have a strong and good and growing bilateral relations between Denmark and India. Denmark might be a small country, but we have big ideas, and I also see in India. I mean, India is a huge, of course, country, and also have big ideas. And I think if we merge together, we can actually do a lot together.
So, what are those big ideas that you may be having in your mind?
Well, you think one of the big challenges of today is climate change.
Indeed.
And there we have experience from decades of working with, for example, our energy sector in Denmark, renewable energy, energy efficiency, smart solutions. And there I see we have also with the vision that India has to be to deal with that issue not only in India but also as a global player. We can work together on dealing with climate actions and ensuring that we do it in a way that is also boosting competitiveness. I mean, what we have seen in Denmark is that there's there's actually a mutual interest. There's no conflict between going green and going competitive. Some of our companies, private companies that has grown the most in recent years is our green technology sector. And with the visions that I see for New India, I see that we can partner together. So we come with skills and ideas. India has scale, also many skills. And I think if we merge that together, we have a good future.
Indeed. Mr. Minister, when we talk about Denmark-India relations, how would you describe the contemporary or the current state of play in Denmark-India relations in terms of trade, investments and people-to-people ties?
Well, we do have today very good relations, but the potential is so much bigger, both for Indian investment in Denmark and also Danish investment and cooperation with India. So that's why I'm also advocating for a real green strategic partnership with India. We have already on sectoral basis close cooperation with India. And that is going quite well, I also hear. We see that our business leaders from Denmark are also very eager to come and join forces with India. I think, as I said, we have an unreleased potential. And if we do it right, I think I gave the story of the mouse and the elephant. I think that if we work together, we can achieve a lot.
Mr. Minister, you spoke about your interaction with Prime Minister Modi in Delhi. Under Prime Minister Modi's term in office, we saw India and the Nordic countries hold their first ever summit. So is there any discussion at all on hosting the next summit? And if so, do we have a timeline in mind?
No, I have, of course, also conveyed my invitation to Prime Minister Modi to come and visit Denmark when it's possible for him. Because I think it will be so much fruitful bilateral cooperation between Denmark and India, but also, as you alluded to,
Right.
the meeting that was in Stockholm a few years ago between the Nordic countries and India. Because I think we share many of the same wishes for the world we look in today. And the Nordic region, we are not characterized by, richness coming, from for example, extracting industry. Well, Norway maybe a little bit, but the rest of us, we have really invested also in humans and building our societies. And I see the same endeavor here in India. And I think that's the interest of the Nordic welfare state model. And also, despite that we have this welfare state, we also are top ranked when it comes to competitiveness,
Sure.
Doing business. And I see also India now climbing very rapidly up the ladder on doing business. So I think we have a good relationship there.
Mr. Minister, let's talk a bit, if you will, about regional situation. For instance, how would Denmark view the situation obtaining in the Gulf today vis-a-vis Iran?
Yeah.
And also situation in Afghanistan. Denmark is closely involved with situation there. So how would you look at both countries, Iran and Afghanistan, especially in light of President Trump's recent remarks asking NATO to play a more important, more visible, conspicuous role in that region?
Well, I think two very important things. First of all, fighting international terrorism is a common effort we need to do together. And that also including eradicating Daesh or Islamic State, these type of terrorist groups that are many places in the world. And Denmark is very much committed to that. That's a security concern that is directly affecting all of us, India, Denmark and other countries. Secondly, the stability of the Middle East is also in our heart. And also a non-proliferation, and therefore we are very dedicated supporter to the deal on nuclear weapons, preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons as a building block to ensure that regional stability can be preserved. We see that, if we look at the Middle East, that there's so much tensions, and the solutions to these problems need to be dealt politically, and we need to see also from the Iranian side real commitment to JCPOA, the nuclear deal, and also commitment to solve the crisis in the region, whether it's in Syria or in Yemen, or it's in Lebanon or in Bahrain, or it's in many places in Iraq itself. And Denmark is committed to that, to support solutions. In Iraq, we are there, part of the Operation Inherent Resolve, fighting Daesh terrorists. We're also there with a NATO training mission, training the Iraqi security forces, partnering with the Iraqi government to build capacity. Also supporting reform of Iraq, so it meets the aspiration of the people, because stability of Iraq is also fundamental. And we offered from the Danish side to take over the leadership in NATO for the training mission later this year, which are now in the hands of the Canadians. We are taking a big responsibility because we think it's important with security and stability.
A very quick follow-up question, Iran, Mr. Minister. Are you satisfied with the EU3's position, Germany, the UK and France, on possible sanctions on Iran if it does not adhere to the JCPOA? And from the Iranian perspective, we heard the Iranian foreign minister speak in New Delhi, where he alleged or claimed that the EU reneged on its commitments under JCPOA. So your thoughts on where things stand as we speak between the EU on the one hand and Iran on the other hand?
No, I fully support what we call the E3, so UK, Germany, France, and the activation of the dispute mechanism in the JCPOA, because it's the fifth time Iran violated its commitments under the nuclear deal. And we in Europe, we are committed to preserve the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, and we want to see the same commitment from the Iranian side. And listen, I think when we look at the Middle East, if we zoom out, I think it's really much time to diplomacy and also time to delivery on the words. Yeah? And therefore, I hope that Iran will come back to the track. And I also met the Iranian foreign minister when he was here and conveyed the same message to him. We need to see Iran acting responsible, and we all want to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear power.
Mr. Minister, you've spoken about Iran and Iraq. What about Afghanistan? Are you satisfied with the progress in the talks with the Taliban? And where do you see Afghanistan going from here if the government of Afghanistan is not a party to those talks going forward?
No, listen, I think we will see what also the American-led effort where it will lead. But it's important to find a solution in Afghanistan that is also respecting where the country is now after many years of war. And the achievements where we have seen in Afghanistan, I mean, I've been there many times. I've been visiting schools where girls can attend school now, which is fantastic. That was not the case under the former Taliban regime. So we need to preserve the achievements we all have together, the Afghans themselves, of course, but also supported by the international community, also Denmark. So that's in my mind. And then I hope there will be ownership and a possibility for the Afghans to find a solution that will overcome the conflicts. We will support them in that, but we will also support the Afghans who believe that the achievements they have got, whether it's the elections, it's more respect for human rights, schools for girls, and so on, these kind of achievements, we also want to ensure that they are maintained.
And finally, Mr. Minister, a quick couple of questions on issues of particular concern to Delhi, for instance, on terrorism, which India claims emanates from its immediate neighborhood. And we've spoken about a lot of these issues at the Rice-India dialogue here as well. So how does Denmark view India's concerns on the issue of terrorism emanating from its immediate neighborhood? And if you could also speak about how Denmark views the situation obtaining in Jammu and Kashmir today in light of India's concerns about terrorism in particular.
No, I think we all in India is concerned about terrorism, which is all legitimate and very important, and that we work together. That's also why in the UN and also with the European Union we are very active in that dialogue, how we can support the fight against terrorism. And the regional stability and security of India is paramount and important, so that's something we of course support. So that's where we are, and I hope for collaboration, and I see that India is very active. I also hope that the track in UN can be, that some of the bigger conflicts can be dealt with in UN. I really believe in multilateralism and a world order where we have strong multilateral institutions that help mitigate the different conflicts and find a good and peaceful solution that will benefit all of us.
Great. Mr. Minister, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to DD India. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so that was Denmark's Foreign Minister, Jeppe Kofod, talking about bilateral, regional and global issues of interest or concern to both New Delhi and Copenhagen. A quick word about the minister himself. The 45-year-old Kofod became the foreign minister in June last year. Before that, he was a member of the European Parliament between 2014 and 2019. He was the vice president for the S&D group between 2016 and 2019 and spokesperson on foreign affairs between 2000 and 2013. He's an alumnus of Harvard University in the US and has been a Fulbright Fellow as well. All right, joining me in the studio is Ambassador Neeraj Srivastav to talk about Denmark-India ties. Ambassador Srivastav, thank you for joining us on DD India. Now, you served in Denmark, so before we get into substantive issues at hand here, would you like to share some anecdotes from your stint in Copenhagen? Could you give us a slice of life in Denmark, so to speak, or a flavor of the people and culture of Denmark for the viewers who might not be familiar with Denmark ties?
Denmark is one of the Nordic countries, and it has a very special social security system in place, which takes care of its citizens from the cradle to the grave.
Right.
Education is free, healthcare is free, and in fact, if somebody loses his job, then the state pays pays generously to look after himself. It is one important feature of Denmark is that it is a very green country, in the sense that it derives a great deal of its energy requirements from solar from wind power. Actually, it is one of the pioneers in the use of wind energy,
Right.
and it is gradually moving towards less reliance from fossil fuels to renewable sources of energy. So, this is another feature of Denmark,
Right.
and though it is it may have seemed to be a small country in terms of its population, 5.5 million, the standard of living is very good, and it is a very innovative country. In terms of the new patents applications filed, it has one of the highest patent applications filed in Europe, when you compare it to the size of its population. So, it is a very innovative country. Insulin was in fact discovered there, to give you one example.
Sure.
Also, some of the most iconic names in the world, like for example, the Lego, for example, or with which children play, the toy
Right.
Lego, the famous toy Lego, or the music company Bang & Olufsen, or the shipping company, one of the world's biggest shipping companies, Maersk. They are all Danish, and many people don't know that they are actually Danish companies, but they are Danish companies.
Right.
So, this is one other feature. Another thing I would like to highlight is
Sure.
that it is not very well known that India-Denmark relations go back 400 years.
I see.
People think that it is India's relations with Denmark are very new, and we opened our embassy in Copenhagen only, I think, in 1962. But our relations go back 400 years actually. In fact, to the year 1620, and I will come on that aspect a little later.
Sure.
But you wanted me to talk about some aspects of Denmark's life. Now, Denmark also has a monarchy.
Right.
It is a kingdom. It's the kingdom of Denmark, and the monarchy, the Danish monarchy, is more than 1,000 years old. That is not a very well known fact about Denmark, and that at its peak, the Danish kingdom included countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland,
Right.
and also part of Great Britain itself. If in some of the Shakespeare's plays, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark.
Right.
Hamlet, I mean, the fact is that Shakespeare actually visited Denmark, and he wrote the play there. The mention of Denmark is not accidental in Shakespeare's play.
Sure.
It is a fact that Hamlet was the Prince of Denmark, and till today, every year in the summer, this play, the Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, it is every year it is played in Denmark, this has been going on for many decades, and some of the most famous film stars, movie stars like Richard Burton and others have played Hamlet, in this play, this particular play, Hamlet, King of Denmark. So, so these are some of the, I would say,
indeed, it's a fascinating, fascinating intervention there, Ambassador.
Yes.
But if we can come to the present day situation in obtaining in India-Denmark ties, the minister in the interview spoke about a green strategic partnership. Now, for many who would not be familiar with this new terminology, what does it actually mean and what would it entail?
As I mentioned earlier, Denmark is moving towards complete reliance on renewable sources of energy.
Right.
And secondly, that Denmark has has built great expertise in clean energy. They even use all their waste products, household waste and other industrial waste product to produce energy. They don't waste, actually they don't waste anything. They produced heat for warming their homes during the winter, and so it is clean energy. And so at present India is, for example, management of waste is a big issue.
Sure.
Is a big issue in India.
Indeed.
And there are many Danish companies which are pioneers and which have great expertise in this regard of converting waste to energy.
Sure.
And so we can, we can benefit by collaboration with Danish companies. The other thing is green. You mentioned clean and green partnership.
Right.
And by green I meant that renewable sources of energy. And here again in wind energy at least, Denmark is one of the leaders.
I see.
And it also has a presence in India, and I think we can collaborate with Denmark on in this field also.
Sure. That was about the current India-Denmark ties, Ambassador. But if I were to ask you, are there any irritants in the relations at all? For instance, is the Purulia arms drop case still being discussed between Delhi and Copenhagen?
Well, it is my understanding that the Purulia arms case continues to be an outstanding issue in India-Denmark relations. This was an unfortunate incident which caused some problems in the relations between the two countries. Even during the time I was there, which was from August of 2015 to October of August of 2013 to October of 2015.
Right.
But I understand that since then the two sides have discussed working out a solution to this particular problem, and that these discussions are proceeding. It is my hope that this issue is resolved as soon as possible, because Denmark and India really don't have any problems between them. They are two democracies. They have the same objectives in terms of world peace and in other terms. And also I would like to say a few words later about the economic partnership between India and Denmark.
Sure.
So we should resolve. It is high time that this issue was resolved.
Indeed. Now you spoke about the economic partnership, Ambassador. Now there are two tracks here, two parallel tracks, one bilateral between India and Denmark, the other is at the multilateral level between India and the EU as a whole. Now how would you describe these two tracks and what might be the way forward in both these tracks?
Well, I think that I think these two tracks they can run parallel to each other. But Denmark is a member of the European Union and shares its objectives, but at the same time Denmark also has a bilateral relationship with India.
Absolutely.
Which is separate from India EU relations as such.
Sure.
And I think there is more flexibility as far as India Denmark relations are concerned. When you conduct relations between two countries, the flexibility is more than the flexibility available to you when you conduct relations between one country and the whole of EU, which has over 24 countries.
Sure.
So they can run parallel to each other. The objectives are similar, and I think these two can reinforce each other also and complement each other also.
Absolutely. Ambassador, we are running out of time, but very quickly, one last comment from you, and that has to do with what the minister said in the interview. On the issue of terrorism, the minister was very categorical, saying that he understands India's concerns and that India's concerns are legitimate. Now, would that be welcome in New Delhi, given the fact that Jammu and Kashmir and other parts of India are victims of terrorism emanating from India's immediate neighborhood?
Well, of course, we would welcome Denmark's stand on terrorism. Terrorism is an evil which affects not only India, but it has lately been affecting European countries also. And in fact, during my time also, there was a terrorist attack in Copenhagen in which a few people were killed.
Right.
And so, the blowback from the war in Syria, for example, and other conflicts around the world. So, terrorism is something which is affecting, it's affecting Europe also.
True.
And India would welcome cooperation in the field of terrorism, and we would welcome opportunities to fight this menace jointly.
Indeed. On that note, Ambassador Neeraj Srivastava, thank you so much for joining us on DD India. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and that's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.